All right. Well, it is at the top of the hour here, so we'll go ahead and get started. So thanks to everybody for joining us today. I'm Justin Cochiola. I'm the marketing manager with IC Bus, and I'm joined by Doug Becker from Frisco ISD, Billy Hewish from Farmington Municipal Schools in New Mexico, and then Chris Gutierrez, who is Navistar Chief Engineer of Advanced Driver Assist Systems. So today, the topic that we're really talking about is collision mitigation, and what all goes into that. From a school district standpoint, into the decision-making process, and from Chris's standpoint, just a few details on how it works. So, everybody, thanks for joining us today. And Doug, let's start with you first. So, what was your initial reaction when learning that electronic stability control and collision mitigation would be available in the industry? And, did you really know much about it? And if not, how did you go about educating yourself?
Well, I knew about it because you see it with passenger vehicles. Over the last few years, you've seen that type of technology pop up, whether you get a rental car or you see it on commercials. And so I was aware of it, and I knew it would probably venture in and talk to several of the vendors. I knew that it was coming the way of bus. And so I was open to the technology, a little skeptical at first. And then I was invited to a demonstration in Arizona a couple of years ago that allowed me to see it firsthand. And so I was really sold on the technology because I viewed it as a way to help the driver be safer and be safer for the students, everyone involved. And so I was pretty excited about it, but a little skeptical at first just because it was a new technology being offered on a bus.
Billy, anything to add there for you, just from your standpoint?
No, coming, being a firefighter, and in the later years of my first career there, we saw all of this coming at, in the vehicles. And, you sit there and you think to yourself, wow, what if they'll ever put that on a school bus? So, really just knowing what was in the vehicles, and then, what's coming at, and then, serving on the IC cab committee for the couple of years that I served on it for you guys, and listening to you back then, just talking, and you think, wow, will this ever really happen?
So, Doug, you mentioned as well the product demos with Bendix. So, what was your initial reaction when seeing it? How did your opinion change from going into that demo and then, after experiencing it?
Well, it was really cool because the bus was on a racetrack, and so you got to see the collision mitigation being tested with a rental car. And I felt sorry for the driver in that rental car because, the driver of the bus totally took his hands and feet off the controls, and the bus actually stopped itself. And I saw it with my own eyes. And talking to Bendix and talking to IC, I was really impressed with what the technology offered. And so at that point in time, we had not purchased any buses, and I remember talking to IC group there about training and videos available for our district to be aware, because I knew that naturally our staff would have questions about it, and so I was very optimistic when I left that demo, and then was confident to be able to have 2 years ago purchased buses with the systems on
it. Billy, this one you can jump in first here. So just in regards to implementing this technology into your fleet, were there any challenges that you faced, just from a driver education standpoint?
Really, there wasn't. We were, like Doug, we were invited to go to a live demo. So I took my shop foreman and we went out to Dallas, Texas, again out to a nice racetrack, and watched this, demo of the products that was out there, what they offered. And I mean, just so impressive that my shop foreman and I, we came back and we sat down, with the drivers. And at that time I had 26 IC buses on order that I had, looked into the product and just looking at the Wingman Fusion, we went with the Fusion. We went big. And then after seeing that out there at the Texas International Speedway, my shop foreman and I came home and we actually took the drivers out when the new buses started rolling in. We took them out and we started showing them, everything that the bus had to offer. And, a few drivers kind of concerned at the start, but once we started explaining everything to them, showing them what the bus would do or could do, they were very impressed. And we had no issue whatsoever, training the 26 staff that got the new buses.
Doug, how about you? Any challenges from a driver acceptance standpoint with this new technology, and just from a training standpoint, anything that you did differently to kind of get them up to speed on the technology and how it works?
Yeah, there was some pushback in the beginning, and we knew that it was going to be kind of a training effort to get everyone to understand and be sensitive to the new buses. The first year we purchased 19 IC buses, and then last year we purchased 28 buses. So we've got a total of 47 buses equipped with it now, and our plans are to move forward every year purchasing buses with that equipment. So the first item was really just drivers being familiar with it and understanding it. We had a representative from IC Bus come to an in-service meeting at the beginning of the year to talk with all the drivers about it, because at some point they'll operate a bus with the system on it, right? And so it was very helpful for them to ask questions. And then with the drivers that had those buses assigned to their routes, we actually had a trainer take them out with the systems and show them the systems and answer any questions. And then what was very helpful was for our technicians. Our technicians, not knowing really kind of the ins and outs of the system, drivers were coming to them asking them questions and they didn't know. So we did a all-day training session with IC and Vindex, where they took them through the systems and how to troubleshoot what the systems were doing. And that was very, very helpful for us.
Was there any, and this is really for Billy or Doug, and then we'll get to you, Chris, I promise. Was there any kind of internal selling that needed to take place? This was a different feature than, that has been in the industry before. It's not necessarily in the state spec everywhere. So was there any kind of internal selling that had to take place just from any other stakeholders that go into the school bus purchasing decision-making process?
Basically, for me, mine was pretty simple. I've got a very supportive chief of operations that's my supervisor and school board. And basically, I just took it to them and they just told me whatever I wanted, I could put on the bus. They were very, very supportive. After the buses came in, took one up to a school board meeting for them to see. And I mean, they were total at awe of what has come out, in school buses over the years.
For us, very similar to Billy in his situation, great support. Anything that is going to help make that bus safer. The school board has been very supportive, and upper administration in our district, and providing a school board update about the systems coming in on the buses and what the systems do. But I didn't have any concern from anyone, school board or upper administration.
Great. So Chris, you've been sitting there so patiently. So, there are a number of different technologies available in the industry today, but there's typically a very distinct difference between the two. So, and that's really the presence around a passive technology and an active technology. Can you just describe the difference between the two?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we should understand is how each one of those different types of systems interacts with the driver. In a passive system, there will be a series of alerts generated that will be communicated to the driver, both visually and audibly. And in some cases, a haptic system might be present. On our vehicles, a haptic system is not available, but in the industry, that may be an option. Now, those alerts will come through, as I mentioned, audibly and visibly, and it will inform the driver of their surroundings and give them a heads up about an impending dangerous situation that they need to address. Now, when you progress forward to an active system, not only will the driver receive all of those alerts, the system will then subsequently take action to assist the driver if the necessary action hasn't been taken based on recognition of the problem or just the timing, the sequence of time events. So you can imagine a situation where you have two vehicles that are similarly equipped, except one has a passive system and one has an active system. There's a stopped vehicle in front of the school bus. The driver does not apply the brakes in a sufficient amount of time. And the first vehicle, the passive system, will alert the driver, starts indicating visually and audibly that there is a stopped vehicle and the driver needs to take action. The second vehicle will do that, but in addition, will be able to apply the brakes for the driver, just in case for any reason the driver is unable to get to it, right? And so that's really the key difference between the two, is that the active system can go that one extra step and really provide that extra layer of protection to the school bus and the passengers, including the driver.
So Billy and Doug, this one going to throw back to you here. So, are there any challenges with incorporating vehicles with collision mitigation into your fleet, such as selecting which drivers are going to use them, which routes to put them on, any kind of insight into that decision-making process?
Not really, for me, of course, I go by seniority, as much as possible. My senior drivers got the new buses. But I do have areas, we cover about 60 miles south of town on the Navajo Reservation. And we also go 30 miles north to the Colorado state line. So, of course, I put some of my new buses out there because, we pull a lot of grade and hills. So with all of the new technology, I did want buses scattered. So I do have them on unincorporated roads. I've got them, south on the reservation, north to the Colorado state line, and I kept some here in town. So I mixed them up, all different kinds of terrains and traffic situations and everything else.
Yeah, for us in Frisco, we have a criteria where we place new buses on routes based off of the mileage, condition, and the year. And so when we identify who the driver will be, we just take knowing that this new technology is out there. We've already provided some in-service training for it, but we just alert them that you have this additional technology you need to be aware of, and just answer any questions they might have. It has highlighted with some drivers who are assigned these buses some of their more aggressive driving techniques. It'll alert the driver on certain things, and so where a driver may say, well, the system's too sensitive, well, it's actually just the driving habits that they have that are being called out. So we've noticed that a lot with these systems, and once the drivers understand, they kind of adjust their driving habits to not alert the system so much.
And one thing I just want to call out, if there's any questions that anybody has, feel free to drop them in the chat function over here to the right, and we'll get to those at the end. And Chris, I wanted to kind of turn this back to you for a second here. So, for the purpose of this conversation, we're talking about active collision mitigation. So there's an active collision mitigation system with radar, and then there's an active collision mitigation system that has radar and camera. And for the purposes of this conversation, we've heard Wingman Advanced and Wingman Fusion mentioned. Wingman Advanced is radar, Wingman Fusion is radar plus camera, if there was any confusion about that. So can you just compare the two? So an active safety system with radar, how does that work differently from an active safety system that has a radar and a camera?
Absolutely. So I think the first piece of information for everyone to recognize is there are two sources of truth now for the system when we're considering the Wingman Fusion system. With the camera and the radar working together, the system has more information. It can make better decisions, and it can make those decisions more quickly. And so what does that mean for the actual operation of the vehicle? Well, the first thing it means is we're less likely to have what's called a false positive, when the system believes something to be true, but maybe it isn't, right? From an engineering perspective, we need to understand, we'll call it the lesser of two evils. And in some cases, alerting the driver that we believe there's a stopped object in front, even if that stopped object might be a bridge, is better than not alerting the driver that there's an actual stopped object. And so we need to draw that line. And the system will not be perfect. And because of that lack of perfection, we have a tendency to have these false positives. When we add additional pieces of information in terms of having a camera and a radar, we significantly reduce false positives. We directly impact the overall performance of the system by having that additional information. The other thing it allows us to do is enable functionality that we just can't offer with just one piece of information coming from the radar only. So the radar is very good at detecting objects independent of lighting conditions, but it isn't necessarily good at discerning the differences between objects that are part of the background and are, actually real objects that we need to be concerned about. When we add in the camera, we can do different things with the object recognition to determine what type of object it is, which direction it's moving, and so on and so forth. Again, allowing us to enable additional functionality. With that in mind, in addition to just the collision mitigation features, when we add the camera, we can add other features. So there are some other features associated with the Wingman Fusion system that are not available on the Wingman Advanced system, and those are the lane departure warning and the speed sign recognition. Both of those functions are derived specifically from the camera. The radar is not really in the loop on those decision-making processes. And so without the camera, those features don't exist. So we're adding additional features and functionalities in both of those systems are passive systems on top of the active collision mitigation and adaptive cruise control that the radar offers.
Great. And, last question, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So any questions, be sure to type them in there. Really, maybe it's just more of a statement here, but I'll open this up to all panelists. What would be your recommendation for districts that are either hesitant about this technology or, want to learn more information? So Doug, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I would encourage any district to be open to it. It's it's a help to the driver, and it really gives everyone a peace of mind that you have additional help out there on board for that bus to be safe. I would encourage you to find out more about it. IC Bus and Vendex are a great resource to answer any questions about it. And there are videos available to help you understand how it works and what it does. But I would request additional training aids for your district to better educate your drivers and technicians. That really helped us and helped our training team be able to answer questions when new drivers come on board and that sort of thing. So your dealer and IC, I think, can help set that up.
Kind of
Billy?
to say the same thing, I would highly recommend this. It's a product, that, like I say, I would have never expected on a school bus. I'm glad to see it coming. I don't know if anybody, listened to Jim Harris this morning talking, but he talked about, 94% of all accidents are driver error. So if we can add equipment onto a bus, to help us avoid more accidents, the better off we are. We're here for the safety of the kids. And one of my driver trainers here, she says, this system on our buses, she says, this is only making us better drivers. And I mean, that really, really hits home, when she said that, because, the bus drivers, I feel, are the safest drivers. But for her to come in and tell us, it just makes us a better driver. So, I know you got the two systems. Once I looked at it and went through the demo, I mean, it's Wingman Fusion for us here. I've got another bus that'll be here probably in about 4 weeks. It's got the Fusion system on it also.
Chris, any closing statement for you?
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize the benefits that I think Doug and Billy have explained so very clearly here. But it's also important to recognize that these systems aren't static over time, right? The industry evolves, and what wasn't available previously is available now, and what wasn't commonplace previously might be commonplace either now or very shortly in the future. And we'll continue to develop new technologies and offering it through IC Bus to the fleets and really to the families that transport their students on the buses. And so certainly if there's any questions, or if you feel that we're not covering something specifically and you'd like to understand about how this technology is going to evolve over time, that those are certainly good reasons to reach out as well.
Hey guys, we've got a video question. So Sherry, I've added you. Go ahead and allow your video and audio, and we can get you up here to ask your question. In the meantime, do you guys want to address one of the questions that came in through the chat here?
Yeah, so there's a couple of questions I'll comment on pretty quickly. So, the first one that I saw is the speed limit reader and adaptive cruise control all rolled into one with collision mitigation, or those separate add-ons. So, I'll speak for the system that we're talking about here for Wingman Advanced and Wingman Fusion. Those are features within that system. So there really isn't an add-on. Now, certain features do vary if you're going from the radar to the radar plus the camera. So from Wingman Advanced to Wingman Fusion. So depending on what that is, I believe adaptive cruise control is available with both, and the speed limit reader is for the Fusion system. But we do have a product showcase later today, hosted by Randy Ray with IC Bus, and he will kind of take this conversation and go a little bit further into it with some of the features and benefits. So recommend you join in that. That's at 4 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Pacific. Another question here, do all C and D school buses have electronic stability control? I'm not going to answer this on behalf of the industry. From IC Bus standpoint, electronic stability control is available as standard on type C and D school buses, and you have to have electronic stability control in order to have a collision mitigation system like we're talking about here today. Another question, Chris, I'll throw this one to you, and this is probably a joint ESC collision mitigation question here, but it's not really a question, but I'll read it here. So it says, concerned about icy road conditions and handling the bus when auto-averting a collision.
Yeah, so I think the easiest way to comment on this is to first remember that, as Justin just indicated, all vehicles equipped with a collision mitigation system will also be equipped with a stability control system. So that will include your ABS, your traction, and your stability control. The next piece of information that's critical and kind of walking through the scenario is that the collision mitigation system will always cede control to that stability control system. So if, for example, it is trying to avert a collision and it requests braking, that braking is still managed by the stability control system, the same way a human driver's braking request would be managed by the stability control system. If the stability control system recognizes a wheel speed differential or a slip or lockup condition, it will still manage that directly, while the radar or the radar and camera system are requesting that deceleration. So it really works in the same fashion as the human driver does. There's not going to be a time where a human driver would avoid pressing the brakes because they're in a snowy or icy condition if there is an imminent collision, right? We're going to try to avoid that collision, and this is going to be the same reaction. And the subsequent downstream systems that are meant to provide traction and stability are still there, and they still operate in the exact same way to ensure that the whole vehicle is as safe as possible.
Are there any questions out there for, related to transportation directors and what they can do? We have a couple on here. There is one question here. It's kind of a loaded question. And Chris, again, I'll kind of toss this one to you. Not that we want to necessarily comment on what's going on in the automotive industry. It's a little bit different, but so somebody here mentioned that they rented a car with adaptive cruise control and collision mitigation, and they were impressed by it. So what they didn't see was a camera. So essentially they're asking, was there a camera? Was it part of their rearview mirror? Why can't that be done in school bus systems?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing is adaptive cruise control can and is done with the radar by itself. It does not require a camera. But as I mentioned earlier, the camera does provide that second piece of information for a variety of the systems to be more effective. It does also provide some additional features and functionalities associated with the lane departure warning and the speed sign recognition, which is only a feature of the camera. Now, was it integrated in the rearview mirror? It's very likely that it was. The vast majority of passenger vehicles today, if they have a camera, they are integrated into the upper edge of the windshield or into the rearview mirror area. And that serves as kind of a dual purpose, right? It only creates one visual blockage for the driver, the rearview mirror itself, and then the camera on the backside in order to continue to evolve the technology. Now, is it something that we're looking at, and how do we handle that? Well, we do perform studies regularly to ensure that the cameras are placed in the optimal position based on regulatory, based on driver field of view, and based on performance of the system. So it is something that's continually evaluated. And although there are a number of positions around the windshield area that could work, the currently selected position for the Wingman Fusion system is the optimized position to check the vast majority of those boxes across the board.
Okay, any other questions? While they're coming in, I will mention Bindex is holding a demo virtually here on Thursday at 2 p.m. Central, I believe. So be sure to check that out. And again, the product showcase in the IC Bus booth later today at 4 o'clock, and we'll be talking specifically about collision mitigation here. There is one more question that came through. Talking about recording some of the different scenarios that happens. And is that possible with the system that we have today?
Yes, it is. So with the Bendix Wingman Fusion system, there is also an event recorder packaged together with that system. So it is a device that will record for a number of reasons. There's a nice list of triggers which we would need a follow-up conversation on with either your IC bus representative or your Bendix team member. But once those triggers are activated, there is data that is captured as well as video that's captured, and that can be pushed through a telematics device to the cloud and then pulled back down by the fleet, or it can be extracted from the device manually in the event that for some reason we don't offer or install a telematics solution, or that the system is damaged in the unfortunate event of a power loss or a physical damage to the vehicle.
Great. Well, it looks like that's all of our questions. I believe our time is up. So, Doug, Billy, Chris, thanks a lot for your time today and giving us your input and feedback. Really appreciate it. And